One is how we use our limited resource of land. Okay? Now, in the last couple of weeks, you've probably seen on the front page of the Advertiser and the Star Bulletin news about the whole Pili development out in the Upper Plain, and how all that agricultural land is slated for development. We have some tough choices to make as a community about whether we're going to use that land for housing or for agriculture. And if we choose to use it for agriculture, whether we're going to use that agricultural land for food or for fuel. And even beyond that, even if we choose food, whether we use to grow food for ourselves or grow food to export. Okay, now those are the kinds of conversations and tough decisions that we can have if we are deeply grounded in those island principles of compassion, sustainability, and self-reliance. But they're also the kind of conversations that can very easily break down into conflict, right? And we've seen that happen time and time again in our community. Another example is what we are going to do with our waste. Okay, so we know landfills in every county are overflowing. In this county in particular, we've been wrestling with or sometimes avoiding this issue for a long time. And we should remember that wrapped up in this issue of how we deal with our waste is an environmental justice issue, right? Because someone is bearing that burden for us. Every piece of trash that we throw into the bin goes someplace, right? And it just so happens it's going to a community, the Waianae Coast, which is already heavily burdened, overburdened, really, with those things that we depend on that we do not want oftentimes in our own neighborhoods, right? Power plants, landfills, illegal dump sites. All of those burdens are being borne by that community for us, okay? And so where the next landfill goes, if there is a next landfill, what we have to do, what our responsibility is to reduce that burden on the existing landfills are all, again, real difficult conversations we have to have with each other. There are even more polarizing conversations on the horizon, right? Water is probably one of the most critical. Okay, so some of you have probably heard it said that water is the next oil, right? It is a thing that we will be fighting over locally and globally. And we're already starting to see that shape up in places like Maui, where there's a very limited supply and demand from all different types of uses. We'll have to decide whether we want our kids and grandkids to be drinking water from the aquifer like we have, or drinking water from desalination plants, whether we're going to use that water to feed crops or to feed people. Again, really difficult conversations, hard to have, could easily break down. Transportation is another one. Are we going to change how we get around? We saw in the past year how the debate over rail shaped up and how nasty it got at some times on both sides of that debate. A really troubling way of dealing with the community issue there. And we've also seen this play out in microcosm in different islands and on different communities. So I don't know how many of you followed what was happening on Molokai with Molokai Ranch and the La'au Point development, right? That there was a really ferocious fight that divided that community, that island, between those that were in favor of developing La'au Point and forming a community land trust with thousands of acres of land donated by the ranch, versus those who opposed development for cultural reasons and to preserve access to natural resources there. And I cite that as an example because it's an important reminder for us that as we deal with these kinds of issues, the risk we run is that we tear our communities apart. Right? That we polarize, that we demonize each other, and that in trying to have hard conversations and trying to tell hard truths to each other, what we end up sacrificing is that spirit of compassion, that deep understanding that aloha that we have for each other that makes this place